It's hot as hell. It's still light out at 8 o'clock. It's humid like you took a shower in your clothes. It must be Cape Cod in the summer. It's Friday. It's time for the In My Footsteps podcast live stream without a map number 20. XX if you're into Roman numerals. And that's why we're here. I do it in conjunction with my other account, which is for the podcast. But the reason why I do it on this, hey, Kate, you're the first one. You even talked before you appeared in the chat, before I could wave. So, for anyone that's never heard of me, never heard of the podcast, or what it's all about, this is kind of a deep dive into what I do. My podcast is called In My Footsteps. We do New England travel, lifestyle, history, some 80s and 90s nostalgia, all sorts of stuff. It pertains to my life, my experiences, but I find that most people have similar experiences. Hi, Shlee. Now I got 2 sisters in the chat. I have 3 total. We'll see if the third shows up. I don't know. So, let me start off with a fun little story, since Ashley's now here. So for everyone that was watching last week, I decided, because we had that tropical storm that was crap and we got rain and a little bit of wind. I thought, hey, you know what? I'll do the live stream outside. I'll sit in my car and I thought you said you were sitting at Outback. I was like, wait, they closed. My sister Kate says she's sitting out back and having a drink. I thought she said Outback, like Outback Steakhouse. And they went out of business on Cape Cod several years ago. So last week, I was hoping that there'd be wind and, I don't know, thunderstorms or something fun. So I'm out in my car, windows open, moonroof open. You know, I had my bug spray. So basically, it gets dark. The sun sets about 8:15 about now. So by the time the podcast is over, it's getting dark. So during the actual live stream, I had to turn my overhead lights on. Hi, Mom. I'm telling the story of last week. So when it starts to get dark, I turn the lights on, and I didn't think of it. So you all know where this is going. And by the end, it's dusk, and I look out of my car, and there's a rabbit in the yard, and I said, hey, I'm going to take my phone out, and I'm going to get a video of this rabbit running around. And in the excitement of trying to show you all the rabbit, I totally forgot that my lights had been on. So I got done, grabbed my phone, rolled the windows up, shut the sunroof in my car, went inside. The next morning on Saturday, I said, I'm going to get in my car and drive and go for a run somewhere. And my car wouldn't start. And I said, what the hell happened? Did I drive through water or something and the starter got wet? So I had no idea. It took me a little while until I was in the car with the doors shut that I saw the lights on over my head. So I had left my lights on in my car from 8 p.m. the night before till 11 a.m. the next morning. So that battery was ultra dead. Like it never would have charged. I could have put a tombstone on my car. So luckily by the end of the day, about this time on the Saturday, my sister Ashley came and she had to jump my car in the driveway because I had killed my battery putting the lights on to do the live stream outside for a storm that didn't happen. So yay, what a waste that was. I should have just taken a sledgehammer to my car. It would have been easier. So that's what happened last week. So that's why I'm back in my normal haunt here. It's like a storage room at one side of the apartment upstairs where I live. And the funny thing is, I have 2 windows in this whole apartment. And there's no possible way to have a cross breeze. So in here where I'm sitting right now, it's like an oven. So I'm like, oh my God. But I have a plant that one of my clients gave me. Here, I'll show you. So basically, this is an oregano plant. And the story behind it is that This client has a huge one, and it's near her stairway. So it's almost every week when I'm done training her, we go up the stairs, and her dog, her yellow lab, will wait for me at the top of the stairs, and she'll be wagging her tail, and it'll just be destroying this plant that she has. So basically, she took some of the ruined parts and made me my own plant. And it's oregano. It smells good. You only have to water it like once or twice a week. Remember that. But it's by the only window that I really have. So that's why it's in here. It's not that I don't like it. It's just that there's nowhere else for it to get sunlight. That'll change at some point. So, this week on the podcast, I was really excited. It's actually been doing well downloads, so I'm psyched. It started with the story of when I was on Chronicle 2 years ago. So, family knows all about this because I was super excited because I had been trying to get on that show for years. For those of you that are not familiar with Massachusetts television, and if you don't live in Massachusetts, why would you be? Chronicle is a long-running, award-winning news magazine type show, and me being an author, quote-unquote, and 12th generation Cape Codder, I've been trying to pitch an idea to them that would kind of marry the two. And finally, after my 5th book, Cape Cod Nights, that came out 2 years ago, they actually wanted me to be on the show. So on the podcast, I go in depth as far as the behind the scenes stuff. And so, let me see. I'm going to give you a good story. So, essentially, being on TV and having a million people see you, I wanted to look the part. So, I actually went, while I was on my way to the Beachcomber in Wellfleet, that's where we were shooting, I stopped and I got a new pair of dress pants. There were these nice white linen pants. Really nice. I like that because linen's a light fabric, so you can wear them in the summer and it's not brutal. But that day, it was rainy, and so I wore these white linen pants and a blue polo button-up shirt that was my buddy Fitzy, who owned Cape Cloth, a clothing company he used to own. I wore his shirt with his logo on it, so you could see it on TV. I was like, ooh, there's a good pay it forward moment. And by the end of the interview in the Beachcomber, it had stopped raining, so that was good. But the second part of the Chronicle interview with me, I did the part with the book, and the Beachcomber was in the book, so that's what connected it. But then my 12th generation Cape Codder whole thing, I had 2 places to bring them, the crew from Chronicle, like lesser known places on the Cape. And so the first one I brought them to was the Jenny Lind Tower. I don't have any photos of that on my phone, so you'll have to Google Jenny Lind, Lind. She was a Swedish opera singer in the 19th century. And the legend of Jenny Lind is basically that there was a huge concert in Boston that was sold out and beyond capacity. So I guess there were at least hundreds and hundreds of people outside the venue that were kind of getting restless. And legend has it that Jenny Lind went up into this tower that had an opening, and she sung to the people out in the street to kind of stop them from rioting. And basically, this tower that she purportedly sung from was bought in the late 1920s and brought to a place that's right near the old Air Force base in Truro, but it's like in the woods. So if you go to Highland Lighthouse and the golf course and you look to the right, it looks like a medieval castle in the woods. And that's the Jenny Lind Tower. To get to it, there's like a really weak path that you have to go through bushes and stuff and cobwebs. And it's worse when you walk through it in the rain or dampness. So I had to lead the producer / interviewer and the cameraman through the woods to the Jenny Lind Tower. And I'm walking through bushes and cobwebs. So my nice new white linen pants were all brown and green. I was like, oh my God. It's like I might as well have just slid down a hill. I had the grass stains on them. But lucky for me, I was wearing pants. The poor cameraman was wearing shorts and he had ticks all over him. So it's like, I'm so sorry that I brought you to this place where you got wet and ticks. But, you know, such is life. There's more with the Chronicle thing, but obviously I always want people to actually listen to the podcast. I've had people suggest that I do the live stream before the podcast to entice you to listen. But it's more like, I consider this to be like my Talking Dead. Like you watch the episode of Walking Dead and then watch Talking Dead after. So that's like what I'm doing here. It's talking footsteps instead of so we talk about it. Also in episode 29, I talk about when I had a basketball hoop when I was a kid. Well, kid is all relative. And it was fun. We had a basketball hoop in front of the house. And at times, my front yard was like a street playground, like you'd find in Boston or New York City, where we'd have all these kids coming and playing. And every now and then there'd be kids that I had no idea who the hell they were. But I had a good friend of mine named Hassan, and he had cousins in Boston, and they would come down and play. So it was like they're with him, so they're fine. And we painted the 3-point line on the street and the foul line to make it look official. And it was fun. We'd have music playing out there, 1989, 1990. So think of like what you'd consider like athletic, like workout type songs. I would play Public Enemy and Beastie Boys, Guns N' Roses. So there you go. That kind of captures the time. And funny thing about that hoop was you would land underneath the hoop and there was a street and then there was dirt. So constantly landing in the dirt, it kind of packed it down. So the street had like a lip to it. And my ankle seemed to always find that lip where I would land and roll my ankle. And it happened a lot to the point where I think after 8th grade, when I graduated 8th grade, we were playing basketball and I rolled my ankle so bad that I ended up having to be on the couch with an ice pack on my ankle. So it was like, congratulations, you're out of middle school. And it's like, now you're going to get crippled. But yeah, the hoop, that's a lot of fun. That whole story that I tell, there's more to it with the demise of it. It obviously isn't there anymore. And I went recently through the old neighborhood because I had never looked to see if the lines were still there from the old days, from the basketball hoop, spray painting the lines, but they're not. They must have repaved the road, so oh well. I also do I do top 5 lists with every podcast. They're just random, as random as you can get. And so this week, episode 29, I do top 5 Cape Cod scenic drives. What I'm hoping is that you listen to the podcast, you hear about these scenic drives, you plug them in the GPS and you go and find them. And I showed you one last week when I was teasing it, where I said, this here, the Hydrangea House in Chatham, is along Shore Road, which is one of those scenic drives. And the Hydrangea House, it's only in bloom for like 3 seconds every year. So basically, I think right now it's at its peak. So if you're seeing this, if you happen to watch this in a month's time, I'm sorry, it's not in bloom anymore. But right now it is. So I would definitely recommend going. So there are other ones, Route 6A in Truro and Provincetown. A lot of people think that 6A ends at the... there's a rotary in Orleans. There's actually 2. The first Orleans rotary is where 28 and 6A meet. Then there's another rotary where 28 meets the highway. So it's the first one. But actually, Route 6A picks up again in Truro, which is weird, but it does. And so that's nice and scenic. There's all the summer cottages. And I mean the ones that all look alike. The Days cottages in Truro. Those, look them up if you have no idea what they are. They're perfect for sunset photography. They're little and kind of, I guess it's periwinkle blue. And there's this whole row of them. And I go there a lot and do sunset photography of them. It's better after the season's over because then there's no cars. Right now it's like sardines everywhere. So I wouldn't recommend it. But the top fives are never in a particular order. So just remember that. Because I figured there'd be enough discussion as far as my top five. So that's a good one. I do road trips every week. This week I did Middleborough, Massachusetts. So let me go back in time here and find you. See, this is funny because I'm scrolling my phone, but you folks can't see me scrolling. Basically, all you see me doing is moving my hand, which is like, it makes it where it's not as much fun. It also makes it not as much fun if the photo's not there. So basically, Middleborough I chose because they had popped. So on Buzzsprout, my hosting site for the podcast, you can see, besides downloads, you can see your app downloads, where it's downloaded from the most, and also the location where it's downloaded from. And Middleborough, Massachusetts is a place that is constantly in the top 10 as far as cities that download. So I was like, I'm going to throw them a bone and do their actual town. So that's this week in the podcast, Middleborough. And it's a lot of fun. I do This Week in History. I have shortened that down where This Week in History is now just a main topic and a time capsule topic. And then I added the top five. I'm trying, it's mix and match, seeing what people like, what they don't like. I'm always looking for feedback. If you listen, like what you like, what you don't like, suggestions and such, This week I did a time capsule for July 16th, 1961. And that is my stepfather's birthday. And he's in the chat, but I'm not going to embarrass you too much because I already went and wished you a happy birthday. And because it's without a map, I don't have notes. So I can't remember the number one song, number one movie, number one TV. I think the TV show was Gunsmoke. But other than that, I can't remember. So it's like I can't torment you with that because I'm like, I know the show was Gunsmoke. So there you go. That's as good as it's going to get. So I told you about my car. There's another special day that today is. So today is actually the 10-year anniversary of me joining Instagram, which is wild. I can't remember why I looked for it to find out when it was. But then I said, hey, what would be cool would be to share my very first photo that I ever put up on Instagram. And I was just, that's what it was. So I said, wow, there's a good first impression. That was 10 years ago today. That's the photo I put. Heineken and Bass. A couple of beers. I pride myself now on being a much better photographer than I even was then. And I take a lot of sunset photos and it's artsy and I showcase places where I live and places I visit. And I totally forgot that this was the first photo that I put up. Because I was thinking, wow, it's going to be sort of like symbolic. Like, look at that. Wow, my first place I ever photoed, but it's my dresser with my hat behind it that my mother hates. It's like this black and white pinstriped fedora that I said maybe looked like a 30s gangster. I got it for a Halloween party the year before. And I would call it the Stay Classy hat. And I would take the hat and bring it places and like put it in the shot. It was like Where's Waldo, but like a very weak version of it. And I think it's still in my car. Like in the back of my car, just like smashed under things. So if I tried to do it now, it would be just destroyed. But yeah, there you go. That was 10 years ago today. My first ever photo on Instagram. Funny thing is, I believe I am somewhere around 4,500 photos. now. So it works out to 1.25 photos for every day for the last 10 years. Imagine that. Now, granted, there were days that I went in between where I didn't post any photos, but then there were other days that I'd post 4. But that means basically it averages out to 1.25 photos every day for 10 years I've put on Instagram. So if you follow me and you feel like I post a lot, I'm sorry. If you've been following me since day one, holy Christ, you've seen a lot. But wait, I got my second photo too. The second photo I ever posted was this one. Oh man, it's blurry. So I had wished that this had been my first. And the irony is that my nieces and nephew in this photo are normally in the chat and none of them are. And it was meant to embarrass them. But the only one embarrassed is me because I had tried. So basically, this was after my first 5K race. And I was so tired after running it. My calves were just destroyed. I couldn't get up. So Kate, my sister who's in the chat, she had them gather around me. I said I was like Grandpa in his rocking chair. Like, come gather around me, children. And I had to sit there because I couldn't get up. So from left to right, that's Kaylee, Emma, and Landon. And this is 10 years ago. So I put the picture up 10 years ago tomorrow. The photo's actually from May of 2011. And it was taken with like a obviously less than high quality cell phone from 10 years ago. And I tried today to edit it on Snapseed photo editing app. And that's as good as I could make it. So, well, there you go. That was my second photo. That would have been better as a first one. Because then I could have had them recreate it. Because I basically am like that now where I can't stand. But it got better. So finally, after a beer photo and a photo of my nieces and nephews, which was good, my third one, finally, that's more like what you'd expect if you have followed my Instagram page. So this would be 10 years ago next week was my third photo. This is Rock Harbor. And I'm going to go try to recreate this photo because it's the first place I went and shot. So I'm going to have to find those 2 kids in the water that are now 10 years older. I think it was a boy and a girl. I don't know. They're just shadows. So if you're watching it, shadows, if you were at Rock Harbor 10 years ago this week, let me know. And then get in that water and recreate it, and I'll take the photo. You won't get any residuals from it when I make money off it. But, you know, it's all for... I love you too, Serpa. I'm glad that you're not too embarrassed that I kind of embarrassed you. But it's because I can't remember all of the stuff that I put on the podcast. So there you go. That was a look back at my first 3 ever photos on Instagram. Beers, family, and a sunset. At least it wasn't anything too embarrassing. So, coming up next week is a special bonus episode of the podcast. I do 3 full episodes, then a shorter bonus episode. I've explained it a bunch about my extra minutes on my monthly plan with the podcast, so I won't bore you with that. I always try to explain the podcast just in case you've never heard of it. But I assume a lot of people that come into the live stream have been here before or have listened to the podcast. So I try to get to the good stuff and not going over old business like this is a meeting of the Chamber of Commerce or something. So episode 30, these bonus ones, they're like one subject and it's kind of drawn out. I go way more in depth. I've done one on mental health. I did one on my grandfather. That was the first one. I did his kind of celebration of life for my grandpa. That was the first one. So coming up next week, this is a subject that it needed to be done. I had to wait for the appropriate time. So the subject is... Oh man, it's over his face. Hold on, let me try this again. There we go. That's better. I would have felt bad if it covered his face. So I had one of my oldest childhood friends. So I consider that I have two oldest friends that I basically met at the same time in my life when I was about 7 years old. I met a friend named Barry. He's been in the chat. I talk about him a lot on the podcast because he created and runs my website. Well, that, I've known him over 35 years. The other friend was named Matt, and he lived in my neighborhood right across the street. And we grew up together, went through a lot of, seminal moments in life that he and I went through. And, just simple things, childhood, growing up. Think about if you grew up in the 70s, 80s, even the 90s, what childhood was like. You all had that first friend that you made on your own. I don't consider parents bringing you to a play date like you're pushing two people together. I don't consider that making friends. Sure, you may have been friends, but I'm thinking of the ones that you found and met on your own. And, Matt and I got along really well. We would fight like brothers, where, you fight, you don't talk for a few days, then you're friends again, and things like that. And so basically we lost touch for, like 20, almost 20 years. And we happened to bump into each other. I think this was 2016. There's a little Stop and Shop down near where I live. And we happened to bump into each other as grown-ups. And so it became kind of like a running joke where it was like our meeting place. We'd be like in front of the meat section of Stop and Shop talking about life. He was married. He had a newborn daughter. And it was nice to get to talk as adults and catch up and connect with him on Facebook and share. Like, this photo is from when we played Farm League baseball. So he's on the right and I'm on the left with my maroon pants, looking sharp, as my Nana would say, looking sharp. But he passed away suddenly in December of 2017. So, and it was one of those things where I saw him at Stop and Shop and it had been a bad day, so I didn't want to talk. I basically avoided him. I saw him go down an aisle and kind of round the corner, and that was the last time I ever saw him. So there's a lot of grief and regret, and I wanted to talk about that aspect of dealing with it, because I talk a lot on the podcast. One of the last things I say every week is enjoy every moment you can, because you just never know. And the reason I say that is because of Matt. Because I assumed, I'm not going to talk to him today because I'm tired. I want to go home. I'll see him another time, or I'll see him on Facebook. But no. And you never know. I mean, I wish I had had those last moments with him. We probably would have talked about stupid crap, but it would have been, you never think of your childhood friend, someone that meant so much to you. You never think the last memory is going to be his back as he fades away. So I talk about that. It's not all sad and depressing. Believe me, I wanted it to be a celebration of his life and our friendship. Because if I tell you this is going to be like the saddest podcast I do, who's going to listen? It's like, who wants that? It was hard, though. Believe me. So this podcast that's coming next week, of all the ones I've done, is the one I am most glad that I have editing software. Because there were so many times that I had to either pause recording and kind of collect myself, or go back and edit out parts that you can sense it. Because when I talk about him dying, it's final, and how I found out and things. And there's a few parts. I don't want to make it like a search where you listen and you see if you can hear, but you'll know. So that's coming next week. If above all else, I mean, family and friends that know me, that knew him, you'll definitely appreciate it. And anyone that doesn't know who he is, that's fine. Because if you listen, it'll bring you back to your first friends, your childhood. And I mean, maybe it'll make you appreciate those you have. Like, it'll make you think of someone that you haven't heard from in many years, like it was with me and Matt. I didn't hear from him for 20 years, and there he was. So maybe there'll be someone you think of and you'll reach out to. And if I can facilitate that by really opening up my heart and soul for everyone, then that's good. That's what I did with my mental health episode. That's what I did with the episode about when I quit drinking. It'll be a year in 7 weeks. So, still going with that. There's plenty of times that I want to drink when stress climbs. But, I have valerian root and melatonin, so yay. It's good. It's good enough. And Kate, I still want my edibles, the chocolate bar. I'm waiting. Ooh, chocolate bar. So, that's coming next week. After that, I'm excited because starting episode 31, I'm going to do my 2019 road trip. I'm going to actually start to go over the whole thing. I waited, and then it was like, I did the episode on Matt Medeiros, on my friend, and I said, it's one of those, like, why wait? You never know. So I'm going to start doing all of the road trip ones. It's going to start with an overview of this road trip, why I did it, kind of where I went, and then we're going to do the first stop, which was Hudson, New York, right on the Hudson River in New York. And it was voted at times one of the best small towns in America, so that was kind of why I went there. But we're going to start doing that. And I'm excited because I've wanted to share that road trip with everyone and things that I did and saw. And God, I want to do a road trip like that again. I got that in 4 months before COVID started. So it was like, thank God for that. Speaking of road trips, so I'm thinking of doing a road trip early in August. For the next few weeks, I have a few book events I'm doing, so I can't really do it, but I'm hoping in early August to actually take a weekend and go somewhere. Now, it might be Maine, because I have a really good friend. Her name is Shayna, and her birthday was yesterday. And I had been going up there every year to hang out with her during the summer. Actually, during the fall. We would go during the fall. So that might be what I do. Now I'm feeling nostalgic about 10 years ago and my beginnings on Instagram and my travel blog. So I might go up to New Hampshire. New London, New Hampshire was my first overnight travel trip that I did. It's like 3.5 hours from where I live now. And it was funny because I told the hotel I was staying at that I was writing a travel article, and he gave me the business rate, so it was like 40% off. And I literally was writing for my blog that got like 10 views. So I'm like, I'll take it. And I did. I sent him a link to the article, and it gave him a rave review. So free advertising for the 10 people that looked at the blog. And so today I was out. So I have a client that, not the one that gave me the plan, another one. And what we do is, she lives in a retirement community. So before I train her, I will go to the store and pick up some stuff for her. And I go to this place called Peterson's in Yarmouthport. And I pick her up. It's funny, I train her, but I'll pick her up cigarettes, vodka. Today I had to get her coffee filters and half, and scratch tickets. There was one time that she spent almost $900 in there on scratch tickets and booze and coffee and cigarettes. So they see me and they're like, they hear the cash register sounds. And so I went today to get her stuff, and the line was 35 people deep. So, and they moved fast. Peterson's, I give them so much credit. They worked so hard and got everyone in and out. But it got me thinking, Cape Cod is packed with people. So I'm talking to you that are coming here from other places. Be patient and be kind with the people that work here, because there's a shortage of workers and people are doing their best. And there's a lot of, pardon my language, douchebag assholes that come down here and just think that they own Cape Cod just because they're on vacation. And so I appreciated how hard the Peterson's people work. And I've seen posts on social media of restaurants, asking people to be patient and be kind. And it doesn't take much to do that. Just think about how would you like you to be treated that way, or your kid to be treated that way by someone. So just remember that. It's summer on the Cape and it's awesome. And I call Cape Cod a vacation destination because tens of thousands of people come down here every year. But it doesn't give these people the right to act like assholes. That's all. Because I was in Peterson's and it was just incredible how packed they were. And I was like, I should mention that. And granted, summer's not my favorite time of year. Fall is. But still, summer's all right on the Cape. If you can find places that no one goes to, with GPS, that's not possible anymore. But away from that, let me tell you a funny story. So I started last month working at a job as a trainer at a chiropractor's office. I enjoy it because I'm helping people with, chronic conditions have a better life, hand in hand with the doctor, the chiropractor. And so it's so much better there. It's so chill, and I'm helping people, and the boss is very knowledgeable, and he just has a great personality. And I think of where I just came from, the retirement home where I worked. It's like a dumpster fire, that place. They just fired the general manager last week, who was one of the only people that actually did his job. And so one of the guys that worked there told me I have my moles. And so I just laughed. I said, God, the best decision I made this year might have been to leave that job. The people I worked with in the kitchen, I had a couple that I liked, but the people in charge, worst people I've worked with at any job. Incompetent, ignorant, lazy. So working at this chiropractor's office, it's like a breath of fresh air. And I was in there yesterday. I had just gotten in. So I'm putting my bag down in the gym. And you can see all the way through to the front door of the office. I usually shut the door so people can't see me if I'm working out in there, just in case I screw up. But I look, and there's a dog at the door, just looking inside. And so I come out, and there's receptionist is the only other person in there working. I said, there's a dog outside. And when we went to the door, it ran away. And so there's people in the parking lot looking for this dog. And we were asking them, did you see a dog? And they said, yeah, we don't know whose it is. So we're out there trying to get the dog inside. And it's hot as hell like it was today. And the dog is like panting and nervous. And we brought it inside, and it immediately pees on the rug right in front of the door. And so I feel bad because in this chiropractor's office, they want you to wear a mask still. So I was wearing my mask, and I took it off because I thought maybe the dog was afraid of it because it was like these skulls. And I started writing down the phone number on its collar. And it was a woman in the office getting worked on, and she came out. I heard you talking about a dog. Oh, it's mine. And her name is Maisie. And so she said, oh, she'll wait outside. So she leads the dog back outside, and it's sitting out by the door. So me being the way I am with Instagram, I said, I want a picture of this dog. So I went outside, and I was crouching down next to the dog, and she finally stopped moving long enough for me to get this photo of her. And I can't remember what type of dog she is now. Everyone knows but me. But I took this picture of her, And I stood up and the door was like right behind me. So I opened the door like a foot and she whizzes right by me and runs into the gym. And she's running around the gym, and all I could think of is, oh God, if she pees on the floor in the gym, I'm going to get in trouble because we had already put the dog out and it's my fault she got back in. But luckily we got her back out and she waited outside. But it was so funny, just random that this dog was just there. And speaking of random, so I always go running at my old high school, DUI high school, because it's not too far. Oh, Australian Shepherd. That's what Maisie is. That's what this dog is. Maisie, Australian Shepherd. Very cute. She looks like a little loaf of bread, like kind of brown, and I wouldn't mind a dog like that, but they're probably expensive. But yeah, I went running at DUI high school. That's my new thing. I'm trying to get back into running. The chiropractor is trying to fix me so I can run again. And I didn't know that right there at the football field, at the track, there's an osprey nest. There's osprey nests everywhere. It's like there's more of them than there are Dunkin' Donuts down here now. Everywhere I go, you hear that screech that the osprey make. They're everywhere. It's like that's what Cape Cod has now. Osprey, turkeys, squirrels, coyotes, seals, sharks. There you go. But I'm running around this track and there was a really low flying osprey. I mean, 20 feet above me. And he had a huge fish, his claws, flying over my head. Just one of those weird sort of random, like, yeah, that fits for my life. Like I could have thrown my headphones at it and hit it. But its nest was right there. So there's some random stuff. But yeah, so I've actually gone pretty well on track today, talking about the podcast and stuff. So I'll get to near the end here and just check out the podcast. You know, like I said, episode 29 is now up wherever you get your podcast. Apple, Spotify, Pandora. And, you know, if you enjoy it, I always say give it a shot. If you enjoy it, share it. You can't do like, share, and subscribe. That's what they say on YouTube. But, you know, spread the word. Right now, this month, July, is on pace to be my most downloads in a month. So I'm pretty psyched about that. I hope that some of you have checked it out. After next week, after episode 30, there's going to be a week gap. It's not a season finale, but I kind of wanted to let the next week's episode breathe a little. So if you have the time to go check out a few episodes, definitely check it out. Let me know what you think. It's like a potato chip. You can't eat just one. Usually if you listen to one, they're 45, 50 minutes. You're in and out. It's a bunch of different topics, so it doesn't overstay its welcome. And, you know, you check that out. YouTube, I do, obviously this weekly live stream goes up there. It'll be up there in about an hour. I put it on IGTV. I was doing segment videos for the podcast on YouTube. Basically, it would be a segment from the podcast that I would put in video form, but it's a lot of work for not enough views. So it kind of became like cut my losses. Like I'm not going to spend all this time making these videos to get like 5 views. It's like, why bother? It's like spitting in the wind. But, you know, if you want to check them out, you can do that. If you want to buy me a coffee, you can go to buymeacoffee.com, find the In My Footsteps podcast. It's donations, but what I do is I use them for advertising for the podcast. If you go on Facebook, I try to make the ads centric to New England. So if you don't live in the New England states, I'm not going to target you. But if you're friends of friends, you might see it. So you never know. It's just ads for each podcast. And so that's it. That's all my work, all my spiel. It's a passion project. You know, I still enjoy doing it every week, and I've got so much content. Like I could do this podcast another 4 years and just no problem. But it all depends on, you know, you out there. If you like it, You can DM me on here. I love it. I get people that DM me. I had a guy, he's not in the chat. I thought he might, but he was asking me recommendations for where to stay down on the Cape for his anniversary with his wife. And I gave him a couple of B&Bs that I know the people that own them, because that's how you support local business. You help your friends out. So I don't know. Hopefully he'll go to them, or one of them, not stay at multiple. I'm not trying to bankrupt him. I told him about Waukwausit, and he's like, it's too expensive. I'm like, sorry. So yeah, thank you all for tuning in to the weekly live stream without a map, because I just shoot from the hip. Last week's podcast, this week's podcast, all that stuff. I go off the rails with funny, embarrassing stories that usually involve me. And this week with the heat and humidity, I sweat like an MF in here because I'm in a sauna. But I got AC on the other side. So that's what it's going to be. It's going to be literally like, it's like I took a shower in my clothes in here. Oh my God. So enjoy the rest of the weekend. Tomorrow's going to be a big day. The family, we're having a celebration of life for my Nina. So I can't wait to see all the family get together and have more laughs like we always do. The craziness, it's always good. And, hanging with family, it gets better as you get older too, because you appreciate it more. I could have gone to something like this when I was 13 and I wouldn't have cared. I'd be like how my nieces and nephews are now, where it's like they don't care. They're on video games. So thank you all. Check out the podcast if you want. I'm always posting links. Follow my sister page, the In My Footsteps podcast page. It's got a link in the bio to the podcast. There you go. It's everywhere. You can't miss it unless you want to miss it. And if you want to miss it, why are you watching my live stream? That's all I'm saying. So thank you. Happy Friday. Happy weekend. Stay cool. And I will talk to you again next week, or sooner than later if you see my stories. So peace out, y'all.